Okay, this is going to be a little bit more of a basic video on basically household finance, personal finance 101. If you have your financial situation well in hand, you can certainly skip this video. But this is just a simple exercise that I think everybody should do at year end. And what I'm going to do is we'll talk about what the exercise is and what types of things you should think about. And we're going to talk about how doing the exercise actually is a mechanism, strangely, it's a mechanism for you to literally impose your will on your financial situation. So the exercise is just very basic. Add up your net worth. And there's some judgment calls here. On one level, it's very simple. You just take your different bank accounts or brokerage accounts, or if you have an IRA or a 401k plan, just add up these numbers. Usually there's a debate here about whether to include your house or your home. I would not actually. What I prefer to do is just look at the financial capital, your financial net worth, but this is a judgment call. The whole point is to do the exercise and see what the number is, right? And the next step is to just basically compare it to last year. And at this point, I want to just make an observation that if you can do this, actually, you're already a step ahead of almost, I don't know, more than half the households that most people just simply don't track their financial situation at all. But also, comparing it to last year is one of these exercises where if you do this every single year, it's an effortless exercise to compare it to last year because you already added this up last year. But if this is the first time you do it, you realize, well, it's a little bit more difficult to know what last year's net worth is. It might be kind of a pain to go and get all the statements and so on from last year. But it's one of these things that once you start measuring it, it becomes an easier and easier habit because you have the historical information that's automatically available to you because you start tracking this number, right? And then the next thing is to ask, when you look at this year's net worth and you compare it to next year, why is my net worth where it is? So, and this is, again, it's sort of a meta question, right? Like if you have a negative net worth number, you have more credit card debt than you have assets, for example. Well, why is this number where it is? Well, it's because I've built up this debt load and I really should face it and get out from under it, for example. Or let's say you've taken up your net worth significantly from last year. Well, there's going to be drivers of that. Perhaps you saved a lot of money last year, or you bucked the overall market trend and had very good investment returns. So these things are worth thinking about, to sort of think about what the drivers were, and if your net worth is down because your investment returns were poor, is there something that you can do in the future to ameliorate that, right? So it's a thought experiment. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just the whole exercise is by thinking about it, you start to impose your will on your financial situation. And of course, you can change this number for next year by saving more, for example. We'll get to that in a minute. So then your plan for next year, right? Here is where you want to think about, okay, what are my likely expenses going to be this year? What can I be likely to save this year? And again, it's a great meta question, right? If you never ask yourself this question of how much might I be able to save this year, do you think you'll save any money? Right. The whole point is most people don't ask this question and just sort of live and don't actually have savings as a directed act that they commit every month or every week or every year, right? So the act of savings and thinking about what you could save is actually a mechanism for imposing your will on your financial situation. And then likewise, what would I do with the savings in terms of investing? What kind of income might I generate from my investments? What other alternative income sources might I be able to generate, like if I start a side business or do some consulting, something like this, to diversify away from my job income? So these are the kinds of things that you want to also think about when you're adding up your net worth number each year. And then, I guess the most important thing is to start thinking long term, right? And it's a stage that's becomes very natural. Once you start looking at a couple of years of net worth changes year after year, then you start to think out a few years, 3 or 5 years, and you can start to sort of compound out where numbers ought to be. Obviously, these are guesses or estimates, but the very act of working on these estimates and thinking about what you might be doing in 3 years or 5 years. The fact that you even have a 3 or a 5 year plan and that maybe you can save more or less, right? These are the types of things that actually are the way you impose your will on your financial plan. And it, again, suffice it to say, nobody does this. Very, very few people do this. If you do this, you will distinguish yourself or differentiate yourself from the vast majority of households. And certainly in our culture, personal finance is one of these domains. It's not that hard a domain. It just requires some attention and some thought and some planning. And we live in a culture that's not really into kind of burdening ourselves with these things, right? So this is just the exercise at each year end that you're going to want to do, and to start thinking about these steps, thinking about how the next few months and then years are going to look, and you'll be shocked. You'll start to really get on top of your financial situation. You just have to give it time and pay attention to what the numbers are. So again, basic post for today for the sort of the Finance 101 or the personal finance beginners. But as always, I hope these videos help, and I thank you as always for watching.